Okay, so we harvested some honey. This is one of our hives. So you get the idea. There's a lot of honey in here. A few different types. We've got that dark, wonderful holly there, which is one of my favorites. We've got some lighter stuff too, just a wildflower and saw palmetto. But here we go. The bees also sometimes build this stuff underneath, which they're trying to store a little honey underneath the frames. These are upside down right now. And sometimes even if you give them too much of a gap, you see how they start to build a big hump, and they build outward like this. This is all capped honey. So the honey is sealed up inside these wax chambers. And if you break open one of these wax chambers, expose the honey. Wonderfully flowery. Very good. So this is it. And yeah, so we got 20 frames here, 2 supers we pulled off of one hive. We got a lot more to go, but this is the start, and we'll start processing this honey tonight. One other thing when you're processing honey that comes in handy is make sure you cover any surface you're going to be working with. Make sure you cover it with something. Definitely your floors, because you're going to end up with very sticky honey everywhere. In fact, most of my stove has some that dripped out of these frames overnight, and I'm going to uncap all this soon, so honey can drop everywhere. So to be safe and not get honey on everything, we're going to paper everything. Okay, now a lot of you who are beekeepers, when you get your spinner back out of wherever you stored it, make sure you clean it really, really well. It means totally disassemble it. I know it's a pain in the butt. Totally disassemble your spinner, clean it thoroughly, put it all back there, and make sure it's 100% dry, because the whole point of honey is dehydrated nectar. We don't want to add any more moisture back to it by leaving water in the bottom after you washed it. So pull your top off, pull your rack out, pull your spinner out, pull everything out, wash it all thoroughly, put it back together, dry it real well, and then you'll be ready to spin. And you get to repeat this process after you've spun out your honey. So clean it before you put it away, clean it when you take it back out. You can also use a food grade oil that you can put over the stainless steel to protect it even more than it is, to keep it nice and shiny so that you don't have any problems with it. And I've had this one for years and it still looks almost brand new. So that's how good you keep it. So definitely critical that you keep this very, very clean. Now how a honey spinner works is like this. It's got a handle back here, and as you spin that handle, it spins the frames. And you don't have to go too fast, because what it'll do is it'll shoot the honey out against the wall right here, and the honey will pour down to the bottom, where it comes out through a gate valve like this. This is a Dadant spinner. So that's it. That's our spinner, and it's just a gear. And this one's a plastic gear. But it still works fine for me. You don't have to overspin it or go crazy. After you spin one side, take your frame out, turn it, put it back in, spin the other way. And this is a 4-frame spinner right here. I can spin 4 full frames in this at one time. And this is a manual crank spinner. Some have a motor attached which will spin. Now I can actually attach a motor to this if I wanted to, but I don't spin hundreds of hives, so the way I look at it, I don't need it. This is fine for me. Now this is a decapping blade. Now this right here, now they have heated versions of these. I prefer not to use the heated one. I prefer this regular one like this, because heat is honey's enemy, and I try to keep any heat away from my honey at all costs. But this is a decapping knife. Be very, very careful. These are super sharp, razor sharp knives. I mean, really razor sharp. So be very careful with them, and we'll uncap some honey. Okay, now I'm going to do this real quick to show you how to do this. Now, this one actually was a little bit attached to another honeycomb, the other frame, so it ripped a little when we pulled them out. But that's fine. One thing you want to do is go through before you do anything and look for any drone cells or any kind of egg laying that might be in here. Find any eggs and remove them. Now, we don't have any eggs here. We have pure honey. As you see, all this is honey, and this is kind of an irregular build right here, so we're not going to get a good cut the first time. But we're going to put our thing in here. Hold on. Try to adjust this so you can see this one. That's good. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put this. Now I like to go in like this and start cutting upward like this first. Give a little snap, and we just. It's all about how we measure the end. Now see, we just pulled off that capping perfectly. We don't need that anymore. Lean my knife down a little into the tray so it catches down there. Now you can use anything. This is just real quick to show you. And then I start going this way. And again, balance your knife on the far side to decide how deep you're going to go with your uncapping. Clean your blade frequently, like that. That helps out a lot. Now remember, you are going to get honey on stuff. It's going to be a real pain. Now here, this was a little shallower, so I'll come back like this and I'll use the wood to guide myself. And I don't want to cut the wood, I don't want to dig into it, I want to reuse these frames. So then we can, sometimes you get this in one shot. This is an irregular build, like I said, so I'm going to have to come over this a few times to get it, to get all that capping off real good. I remember all this capping that I'm putting here is harboring honey too, and we let this drain down too, and we get honey from that. So now you've got your idea here. I'm going to cut off some more capping down here. Go. Now see, I normally would just stick on this one side here. Like right here, I can cut it all off real smooth. But it's like I said, it's irregularly built. They built some high, some low, so we're gonna have to play with this one a little. And this is where you become a master at this at some point. And it's harder without the brace. I normally have these braced when I do this. Do it in another room, but doing it right here just to make, because I have better lighting here for you to see. And I'm working at night, and I normally work during the day doing this. But so I need more light than I do in my honey room. Now you have some up here too. Now a lot of times I can flip my knife like this and just scrape along, just uncap it. You can even take a fork and get these up along the edge, or you can slice it underneath like that. Sometimes you can just put the honey back on the comb like that. And then when you spin it, it'll come out. Now you might, after you spin though, you might also be able to cut some more. You know, once you get some of the honey out of the way, you can see what you're doing. I usually go around the edge like this, because if there's anything capped, it's usually at the edge. When you slice through like that, you'll break them open. At least make it a lot easier to remove it. Now this one's a little more even, so this side should be easier. But that's enough for the video. Now that we have put our frames inside the extractor, now we start to spin, just like so. And you don't need to go too fast. Normally I would close the lid, but I'm leaving this one open so you can see. It usually doesn't splash out much. Now, one trick is you don't have to go very fast. This is fast enough right here. You don't need anything quicker than that. A little jog on the handle here and there to keep up the speed. Doesn't take much, just a minute or so. Now one trick, well, one thing is if you spin too fast, you'll rip the honeycomb out and you'll get a lot more debris in your honey. Harder to filter. One other thing though is you don't have to spin the entire comb out of this side before you switch sides. Spin half of this side out, then switch the other side, spin that out, then switch back, especially if you're using wax base and not plasticell. Now I use plasticell, but if you're using wax base, you could have the whole thing fly out. So you want to be careful about your extracting. So now I've done one side out, and there's still a lot in there, as you can see. I haven't spun it all out. What I'll do is I'll spin it over, and I'll start working this side. So I'll give it a little turn here. I'll grab this one. Again, not all of it's out, it's still loaded with some honey. And I'll put it in, and we'll start spinning that way. Now another thing is, if you notice, I was being very selective with the honey, the frames I picked of honey. I have at least 2 different honeys here, I think about 3. Now I know I've tasted one, so I know what I'm getting, and that's what I'm after. I'm after my dark amber holly honey. That's what I want, that dark honey. Now I'm separating that from the lighter stuff, and in between I'll stop, I'll clean out, and then I'll start processing the other honey. Now I recommend doing that because if you just mix it all, you just get one standard honey. Yeah, that's fine, but I like to separate, and I know about generally in the hive which, how many weeks these frames were getting filled, and then they went on to those frames, so I know what nectar flows they were using, and I select those nectar flows where they're majority of one particular honey, and I throw them in here and separate them, and that gives you a premium honey, not just a wildflower mix. Yes, we're still spinning them. Spinning out this honey, clearing off my stove. Here's the tray, which I've started moving into this just for now. It's a strainer. I'm putting the cappings in and they're draining down into this. So, there you go. Honey's coming out. Okay, now that I've done this, I'm gravity feeding this through cheesecloth. Now through this gate valve I can adjust how much honey I'm letting out. I'm actually letting too much out right now. And what it does, it pours down here into this big jar, which I have set up here, and through cheesecloth. So this filters it through the cheesecloth into this big jar. It is filling with honey as we speak. And I can regulate the flow through this valve, this gate valve, a little more out, a little less out, and let it pour out. And down it goes into the honey. Filters right through that cheesecloth, and bam, you have filtered honey. I like using cheesecloth, it's natural, so it's a much cleaner filter. I think it filters very, very well. So there you go. Alright, now after you've done that, I want you to go clean your jars. So what you do is you get your honey jars and you take them out and you wash them, soap and water, clean them real good and set them out and let them dry. Always do this with new jars before you put them through, before you add honey to them, because there can be chemicals on the inside of the jars. And there's some of our honey, big huge vat of honey here. And that's how we do it. Okay, so here we've dried our caps and our bottles. And here, like I say, take your caps, put them in, and then we'll get ready to start bottling. Okay, now that you've bottled your honey, make sure you put your lids on, and you must affix a identification item, something that gives your name, address, phone number, like that, so that if something happens, somebody could trace you back. But that's required by law, at least in my state. So get your lid. I assign batch numbers to mine. Put your lid on. I assign a batch number to mine, which tells me what hive and when it was harvested. So I know where it came from. Also helps me for keeping assignment on what quality it is. Then you can take this, put your sticker or whatnot you have on here on, and I also can attach a nutritional facts thing for honey, and it tells you the nutritional value of honey, and you can attach this to the side of your bottle or your jar, like so. Oh, well, upside down don't look good, but yeah, you can stick that on the side of your jar if you want, and that'll do it. So make sure your info's on it. You want to advertise as well, so you get repeat business. Come up with some interesting logo. You can't have this, copyright, it's mine. Trademarked. Okay, thank you.